There are sounds that follow you through life, echoing in the quiet moments when your mind is nowhere else to run. For some, it's the whistle of wind through broken windows. For others, it's the creak of floorboards in an empty house. But for Martha Henderson, it was the ring of a telephone. Not just any telephone, but the specific mechanical trill of a red rotary phone that had been silent for 10 years. A phone that should never have been able to ring again. A phone that connected her to a voice she thought she'd never hear again, speaking from a place that shouldn't exist. This is the story of what happens when grief becomes so profound, so absolute, that it tears holes in the fabric of reality itself. It's about a mother's love that refused to accept the impossible, and a little girl's voice that reached across the void between life and death to deliver justice to those who could no longer speak for themselves. It's about the phone that rang after 10 years and the terrible truth it revealed. The red rotary phone sat in Martha Henderson's basement like a monument to grief, its plastic surface dulled by a decade of dust and neglect. She had disconnected it herself on March 15, 2014, exactly 1 week after her 8-year-old daughter Emma had vanished without a trace from their front yard. The phone company had assured her the line was dead, the number permanently retired. So when it began to ring at exactly 3:17 a.m. on the 10th anniversary of Emma's disappearance, Martha thought she was losing her mind. The sound pierced through the silence of the old Victorian house like a scream, the distinctive mechanical trill that belonged to an era when phones were built to last forever. Martha jolted awake in her bedroom on the second floor, her heart hammering against her ribs. She hadn't heard that particular ring in 10 years, but her body remembered it with the precision of trauma. That had been Emma's favorite phone, the one she would use to call her grandmother, tiny fingers struggling with the rotary dial, tongue poking out in concentration. Martha stumbled down the stairs, bare feet cold against the hardwood floors. The ringing continued, relentless and rhythmic, echoing through the house with an urgency that made her stomach clench. She descended into the basement, fumbling for the light switch. And there it was, the red phone on the small wooden table where she'd left it, receiver jumping with each ring like a living thing demanding attention. Her hand shook as she reached for it. The rational part of her mind insisted this was impossible. The phone had been disconnected. The number no longer existed. Yet here she stood, watching it ring, feeling the vibrations through the floorboards beneath her feet. She lifted the receiver, and the ringing stopped. "Hello." Her voice came out as barely a whisper. Static filled the line, punctuated by what sounded like breathing. Then, impossibly, heartbreakingly, came a voice she hadn't heard in 10 years. "Mommy." Martha's knees buckled. She caught herself against the table, gripping the receiver so tightly her knuckles went white. The voice was exactly as she remembered. Emma's sweet, slightly lispy pronunciation, the way she always made mommy sound like the most important word in the world. "Emma." The name tore from her throat like a prayer. "Baby, is that you? Where are you?" "I am scared, Mommy. It's dark here, and I can't find my way home." The connection crackled with interference, but underneath it, Martha could hear something else, a hollow, echoing quality that made the voice seem to come from somewhere vast and empty. "Somewhere far away. Tell me where you are, sweetheart. Mommy will come get you." "I don't know. Everything looks the same. The trees, they don't have leaves, and the sky is always gray. There's a man here, but he won't tell me his name. He says I have to wait." Martha's blood turned to ice. In the weeks following Emma's disappearance, she had clung to hope that her daughter was alive somewhere, taken by someone who wanted a child of their own. The police had suggested this scenario gently, telling her that most kidnapped children were taken by non-relatives who simply wanted to be parents. But as months turned to years with no ransom demands, no sightings, no trace of Emma anywhere, even that terrible hope had withered. "What does a man look like, baby?" The line went quiet except for the static. Martha pressed the phone harder against her ear, afraid the connection would break. "He's tall." Emma's voice finally came, smaller now, frightened. "His face is funny, like it's not finished, and his eyes are too big. He watches me all the time, but he never talks except to tell me to wait." I've been waiting so long, Mommy. When are you coming to get me? Tears streamed down Martha's face. Every maternal instinct screamed at her to comfort her child. But how could she comfort someone who might not even be real? How could she promise to rescue Emma from a place that couldn't exist? I'm trying, baby. I'm trying to find you. Can you see anything else? Any signs or buildings or he's coming back? Emma whispered urgently. I have to go. But Mommy, I love you. I love you so much. Don't forget me. Emma, wait. Don't hang up. Emma. The line went dead. Martha stood in the basement clutching the silent phone, sobbing. She dialed the number back immediately, but got only a recording telling her the number was not in service. She tried again and again until her fingers were raw from the rotary dial, but each attempt yielded the same result. By morning, she had almost convinced herself it was a dream, a manifestation of grief on the anniversary of the worst day of her life. But when she went to replace the phone receiver, she found something that made her blood freeze in her veins. Wrapped around the cord was a small friendship bracelet made of pink and purple beads. The one Emma had been wearing the day she disappeared, the one that had never been found. Martha called Detective Ray Kowalski, the officer who had handled Emma's case. Though officially retired, he had always told her to contact him if anything new developed. He arrived within an hour, graying and heavier than she remembered, but his eyes still sharp with the intensity that had made her trust him during those terrible early days. Martha, I know how hard this anniversary must be, he said gently, examining the bracelet with latex gloves. Grief can manifest in powerful ways. The mind can play tricks. The phone was disconnected 10 years ago. Martha interrupted. You were there and I had it shut off. You said it might help with the crank calls. Kowalski nodded slowly. There had been a rash of cruel calls in the months after Emma's disappearance. People claiming to have seen her, demanding ransom, or worse, simply breathing heavily before hanging up. The disconnected phone had been his suggestion. I'll have the phone company check their records, he said, and we'll dust this bracelet for prints, run it through the system. But Martha, you need to prepare yourself for the possibility that someone is playing a very sick joke. The phone company confirmed what Martha already knew. The line had been dead for 10 years. There was no record of any calls to or from that number since March 2014. The technician who examined the phone found it to be mechanically sound but definitely not connected to any active service. The bracelet yielded no fingerprints except Martha's own. Yet that night, at exactly 3:17 a.m., the phone rang again. This time Martha was ready. She had set up a recording device, positioned a video camera, and even called Detective Kowalski to wait upstairs as a witness. The phone's shrill ring filled the basement, and Martha answered on the second ring. Emma, Mommy, I'm getting weaker. The gray place is pulling me away from the phone. I don't think I can call much longer. Kowalski, who had crept halfway down the stairs, went pale as death. He could hear the child's voice clearly, could see Martha talking to someone on a phone that shouldn't work. Where did you learn to call me, baby? How are you using a phone? The man taught me. He said if I was very good and waited very patiently, I could talk to you sometimes, but only at the special time when the walls are thin. He says you have to stop looking for me now, or he'll take me to the darker place where the phones don't work. Martha's heart shattered. Even in whatever impossible realm Emma inhabited, someone was threatening her child. I'll never stop looking for you. Never. I know, Mommy. That's why I have to tell you the secret. The man who took me, I remember now. He had a truck, a blue truck with rust on the door. And he smelled like cigarettes and something sweet, like the syrup Daddy used to put on pancakes. His name is Walter, and he used to live in the yellow house at the end of Birch Street. He showed me pictures of other little girls in his wallet. Mommy, I think they're here too, in the gray place. The line began to crackle more violently, and Emma's voice grew faint. He's coming back. I have to go to the dark place now. But Mommy, remember the truck and the smell and the yellow house and Walter. Remember so the other little girls can come home too. I love you. I love you. The phone went dead. Kowalski was already on his radio before Martha hung up. The yellow house at the end of Birch Street had been abandoned for 8 years, ever since old Walter Grimm died of a heart attack in 2016. But in 2014, he had been very much alive, living alone in his increasingly decrepit home with his collection of vintage toys and his 1987 blue Chevrolet pickup with rust eating away at the driver's door. The police had questioned him during the initial investigation, as they had everyone in the neighborhood. Walter had been cooperative, even helpful, organizing search parties and distributing flyers. His truck had never been searched because he had an alibi. He'd been at the hardware store when Emma disappeared, with a receipt and witnesses to prove it. But alibis, Kowalski knew, could be manufactured. They exhumed Walter Grimm's body the next morning and found what they were looking for in his coat pocket: a plastic bag containing 7 driver's licenses belonging to missing children from across 3 states. All girls between the ages of 6 and 10, all vanished between 2008 and 2014. Emma's picture was not among them, but her friendship bracelet was, along with a locket belonging to a girl who had disappeared from Tennessee in 2012. The search of Walter's former property revealed a hidden basement accessible only through a trap door concealed beneath a workbench. In that basement, investigators found evidence of multiple victims: children's clothing, toys, and most damning of all, a collection of Polaroid photographs documenting years of systematic abuse and murder. The images were too horrific for the investigators to describe publicly, but they confirmed what Martha's impossible phone calls had revealed. Walter Grimm had been a serial killer who preyed on young girls for over a decade. He had taken Emma and at least 6 other children to that basement, where he had tortured and killed them before disposing of their bodies in ways that ensured they would never be found. Ground-penetrating radar revealed disturbed soil in several locations around the property. But after years of weather and decomposition, nothing remained but shadows in the earth. The basement also contained something else that chilled investigators to their core: an old black rotary phone, identical to Martha's red one, sitting on a makeshift table surrounded by the children's belongings like some kind of shrine. When they tested it, the phone was dead, disconnected like Martha's. But when they traced its history, they discovered it had once been connected to the same exchange as Martha's phone, installed in the Grimm house in 1987 and disconnected when Walter died. Martha never received another call from Emma. The red phone sat silent in her basement, no longer ringing at 3:17 a.m. or any other time. But she kept it anyway, polished and ready, just in case her daughter ever found another way to reach across the impossible divide between life and death. Detective Kowalski never found a rational explanation for what he witnessed that night. He retired from the force 6 months later, unable to reconcile what he had heard with everything he believed about the nature of reality. In his final report, he wrote simply that extraordinary circumstances led to the resolution of multiple missing children cases, without elaborating on what those circumstances might have been. The other families, parents whose children had been missing for years without explanation, finally had their answers, even if those answers brought only a different kind of grief. There would be no reunions, no healing embraces, but at least the terrible uncertainty was over. They could mourn properly now, could lay their questions to rest alongside their hopes. Martha moved away from the Victorian house 6 months after Walter Grimm's crimes were exposed. She donated the red phone to a local museum, along with a plaque that read simply, "Sometimes love finds a way." The museum director, unaware of the phone's true history, placed it in an exhibit about communication technology through the decades. On quiet nights, when the museum is closed and the security guard makes his rounds, he sometimes reports hearing the faint sound of ringing coming from the communication exhibit. But when he investigates, all the phones are silent, their cords unplugged, and their displays dark. He's learned not to mention these incidents in his reports, knowing how they sound. But Martha knows better. She knows that love transcends death, that a mother's bond with her child can bridge any distance, even the vast gray space between the world of the living and whatever lies beyond. And sometimes, late at night in her new home, she picks up her modern phone and dials a number that hasn't existed for 10 years, hoping against hope to hear a familiar voice say "Mommy" one more time. The calls never come now, but Martha keeps calling anyway, leaving messages in the static for a little girl who found a way to help capture her killer from beyond the grave, who loved her mother enough to reach across death itself just to say goodbye. Sometimes, in the darkest hours before dawn, when the world grows thin and quiet, other parents who have lost children report strange occurrences with their old phones. A brief moment of static that sounds almost like breathing, a ring that stops just as they reach for the receiver, a dial tone that carries the faint echo of a familiar laugh. They never speak of these experiences publicly, afraid of how they might sound, afraid of giving false hope to their shattered hearts. But those who have walked the path of unimaginable loss understand that love doesn't end with death. It transforms into something more powerful, more desperate, more willing to break the rules that govern our everyday world. Love becomes a force that can reach through the static between worlds, that can make dead phones ring, that can turn grief into a weapon against evil itself. The red phone sits in a museum now, silent and still, surrounded by other relics of communication history. Visitors sometimes pause before it, drawn by something they can't quite name. Children especially seem fascinated by its bright red color and mechanical dial, so different from the sleek devices they know. If they listen closely, really closely, some swear they can hear the faintest whisper of static coming from its depths, as if somewhere, in the space between heartbeats, between breaths, between worlds, a little girl is still trying to call home. And perhaps, in the moments when love is strongest and hope is most desperate, when the walls between what is and what could be grow paper thin, she still can. Perhaps that's all any of us can hope for in the end. That someone we love will find a way to reach us, no matter how far they've gone, no matter how impossible the distance. That somewhere in the static and silence, a voice we thought we'd lost forever will whisper our name one more time, and we'll know, with absolute certainty, that love truly does transcend death itself. The phone that rang after 10 years taught us this. The connections that matter most can never truly be severed, only transformed. And sometimes, if we're very lucky or very brave, we might just hear them ring again.